Hello chess friends, and welcome to your Art of Chess channel, and welcome back to our best chess games of all time series. So in this series we're following the best of the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history. And today I wanted to show a really brilliant game that was played in 2011 between the two legends of the sport, between Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura. So this game is really incredible because in one particular moment we have sort of a battle between piece activity and structural weaknesses. What I mean about structural weaknesses is that in one particular moment Magnus Carlsen will have sort of an isolated pawn, which is sometimes a long-term weakness, but he has a good compensation. He has the power of the piece activity. So as I said, sometimes in chess I think it's not enough just to create structural weaknesses like an isolated pawn or maybe a weak square or something. You have to also improve your piece activity, then you could have maybe a winning game. So as I said, structural weaknesses are simply not enough, and this game shows exactly that always the piece activity is much harder to achieve, but when you achieve it, then of course you have a beautiful attacking formation, then you have also good chances to win the game. So in one particular moment Magnus will sacrifice everything. In one particular moment Magnus will also have a whole rook down, so be prepared. This was still the tactical Magnus Carlsen. It was a brilliant game played by both of them. So let's check out now the game. In my opinion, it was really one of the best chess games that I've seen in my life. So here d4 played by Magnus, we have d5, we have c4, c6, the Slav defense. After move knight to c3, knight to f6, and we have now the move e3, which is now the quiet variation of the Slav defense. We're waiting now black to take, d takes c4, and then still we can recapture. Of course, some things are not good with this move e3. Of course, the good thing is that we can recapture immediately here this pawn on c4, but you're blocking out a little bit your Darko bishop. That's, I think, the bad side of this opening line. So here after move a6, Hikaru Nakamura is preparing some ideas to play d takes c4 and then to follow up with b5. So that's why Magnus plays first queen to c2, is taking control of the e4 square, and after move e6 we have now knight to f3. So normal development, we have knight from b to d7 and now bishop to d2. So you see, Magnus is playing now simple moves just in order to delay this bishop move. He doesn't want to play bishop to d3, because if that happens then d takes c4 will happen. Then after bishop to c4 black could gain an extra tempo and will create, I think, a new attack against the bishop on c4. So that's why Magnus still delays the move with the light square bishop. So finally Hikaru takes d takes c4, but here still Magnus Carlsen doesn't want to take with the bishop, because after bishop to c4, as we said, black would gain this extra tempo. Then you have to retreat, and with some ideas like c5 I think black can equalize the game, or maybe even black would be slightly better here. So that's why you have to play this idea. After move d takes c4, Magnus pulls off this move a4, which is not allowing, of course, b5. If you play b5, a takes b, and then you could play maybe c takes b5, but now with knight to b5 there is this beautiful tactic. Of course you cannot take because of the activity of the rook on the a file. So that's why a4, very important move here by Magnus Carlsen. So we have now c5. So Hikaru breaks immediately the position with the move c5, which is, I think, also a good choice, because when white is playing every time this move a4, notice that then also he has left a little bit the b4 unprotected. It's also the b3 is a clear target of black, so there are not two weaknesses in white's position, the weak b4 square but also the weak b3 square. So in the continuation, after move c5, bishop to c4, we have c takes d4, and now e takes d4 here by Magnus Carlsen. What you should not do is actually to take here with the knight to d4 is, in my opinion, it's not so good here immediately, because probably you get some ideas of queen to c7 and then you have to retreat with the bishop somewhere. But here after move e takes d4, notice if your opponent plays something like, I don't know, queen to c7 in order to attack the bishop, then I still think that we can stay a little bit longer with queen to b3. We can stay a little bit longer and attack further the e6 weakness, and now in the continuation of the game I think we can break through in one particular moment, not maybe immediately, but as a long-term plan, d5 would, I think, open the position here in a good way for white. So that's why this isolated pawn that maybe Hikaru created here in Magnus Carlsen's position is okay. It's a structural weakness. It's of course a long-term weakness, but I think in the near future this move can be improved with a potential d5 breakthrough. So here in the continuation we have knight to b6, and this is now the normal idea how to play against an isolated pawn. one of the best ways is of course to create a blockade. No, so now you see black is trying to be compact around the square d5. Many pieces are now targeting the d5 square. The queen is protecting this square, the pawn is protecting this square, all of these knights are protecting this d5 square. So now this powerful blockade is simply working here for black. So in the continuation we have bishop to d3, we have now knight to d5, and now after knight to d5 here we have knight to d5. And it was a provocative move by Hikaru Nakamura. He hoped maybe that Magnus Carlsen will take bishop to h7, and then he could maybe trap the bishop with the move g6. But actually here the better way for Hikaru is to take simply with the queen, continue with this blockade idea but with the queen. And that's exactly that good example that shows how sometimes we should break a little bit also the common principles in chess, because many times in chess you don't want to create a blockade with the queen, but that in this particular example it was simply time, because you cannot actually leave the protection of the h7 square, because actually what Magnus Carlsen should have done is simply instead of kingside castle that he played, he should have simply taken the pawn on h7. That was actually the best move, although probably Hikaru hoped for that Magnus will pull off this tactic. But now after move bishop to h7, this is already a bad game for black. If black tries knight to f6, then we still can retreat even to g6 here. That's the weird part of this tactic, because if you take, still we can take, and now with knight to e5, this is an uncomfortable game here for black. So if you try something like g6 here, then bishop to g6, f takes g6, queen to g6, and you see now you have to escape with the king. The king is already in a dangerous position. Knight to e5, for instance, you can try king to c7, but you see now you get even the fork. So white's attack is really brilliant here. This wasn't played in the game, but I wanted to show you how even top grandmasters like Hikaru, like Magnus Carlsen, make really bad mistakes in an early stage of the game. So in my opinion, it was really unnecessary what Hikaru did here after move knight to f7. We have maybe this idea to just to protect the rook further on h8, but now with rook to c1, you see this is already very dangerous. Even if black escapes here to g8, we can simply takes, and now this is a beautiful tactic. Rook takes c8 after something like king to c8. We have even this one. This is completely now winning for white. So as I said, this was very interesting to see, but here Magnus Carlsen didn't want to rush into the attack. He played simply kingside castle and secured the king. It's not a bad move at all, but in my opinion, bishop to h7 much better. So as I said, this was a tactic that Magnus missed, but in this particular scenario here, Hikaru tried now knight to b4. He wants, of course, to get rid of this very annoying bishop on d3. So that's why Magnus takes bishop to b4, and he tried now bishop to h7, and we have now reached, of course, a similar tactical line. So after move bishop to h7, now we have g6, bishop to g6, f takes g6, and now queen to g6. So Magnus missed this move one move later, but Hikaru Nakamura didn't react correctly. Now he got punished, because now the queen gets very active into the game. So after move queen to g6, we have king to f8, knight to e5, threatens, of course, here checkmate on f7. So that's why queen to e7 has to be played here by Hikaru Nakamura. And now how to play when you're the attacking side. Of course, one of the basic principles is, of course, to include all of your pieces in the attack. So which piece should be included in the attack? Of course, the rook from the a file, rook from a to c1 was played, and now there are even some ideas to include maybe the rook on the 7th rank. Of course, the queen is a little bit annoying here, but in some occasions maybe the queen will be deflected from the 7th rank. So here queen to h7, of course, Hikaru is trying now to simplify the game. This would be a favorable position, of course, for black. If white trade off the pieces, then the position is splashed. White doesn't have any more attacking opportunity. So that's why here queen to g3 is pretty much a forced move in order to protect also here the h2 square, because not that only Hikaru threatened the trades of queens, he threatened also this checkmate on h2. So after move queen to g3, we have king to e8. Hikaru is trying to escape from this attack, and now a d5 move, which was a really brilliant move. In my opinion, this is sort of a move that shows how to attack again in these types of positions, because this is not a move that the top engines are suggesting, but it's a human, beautiful move. I think, for instance, my Stockfish engine at home shows that this is supposed to be an inaccuracy or mistake here by Magnus, but I really love the fact that Magnus realized, of course, here his attacking opportunity opportunities, and what he's trying to do is, of course, open the position. He's trying to open the position in front of the king. If that happens, then of course the heavy artillery will come, the rook will come on the d file, on the e file if possible, and the black king could maybe be in a mating net. So after move d5, here bishop to d6 by Hikaru. He's trying to again simplify the game by trading off more pieces, but this allows now the rook to come here on the e file, because when the bishop was on b4, it was protected, of course, the e1 square. This rook to e1 wouldn't be a possibility then. Here Hikaru Nakamura played bishop to d7 and now h3. Here very important move, I think, by Magnus Carlsen, because he wants to play now much more freely with the queen. This h3 is very important, because then queen to h2 is of course not checkmate anymore. So what Hikaru, instead of this move bishop to d7, could have played is maybe to play rook to g8, but this is still dangerous, because we can also maneuver the queen here, and even if you try, I don't know, maybe to deliver checkmate now on g2, still this is protectable with the move g3. But this was maybe sort of an idea here by black, at least to provoke some weaknesses, because maybe as a long-term plan, black could also try to attack somehow the light force, maybe to include the bishop on h3, but no, this is still not possible, because in order to make that happen, you have to open the e file, and this is still very risky. So as I said, still a much better position here for white. But as I said, here Hikaru played bishop to d7, Magnus played h3, we have bishop to e5, rook to e5, and now after rook to g8 attacks the queen, we have queen to e3, and here rook to g6. Of course, Hikaru is trying his attack here on the g file, but Magnus simply continues the pressure with d takes e6. We have bishop to c6, and now comes a stunning tactic that Magnus Carlsen pulled off here. He played simply rook takes c6, a beautiful exchange sacrifice. Notice that of course black is now next to rook, but the king is so endangered that it's almost game over here for black. Really beautiful tactical shot by Magnus Carlsen. After b takes c6, we have now queen to e4. The problem is now, if you try something like rook to c8 to protect this pawn on c6, this is not good, because then you get this one, rook to g5. This was a beautiful tactical preparation by Magnus Carlsen. You could maybe try rook to g7, but now we takes, and now after rook to g8, the problem is you cannot protect your rook now anymore. You have to play king to e7, and now we take. Okay, this is still an endgame stage, but of course now we have 3 extra pawns here on the king side, and it would be simply game over here for Hikaru. So that's why after move queen to e4, Hikaru tried queen to g7, is trying also a counter attack against this weak pawn on g2. So that's why Magnus plays first queen to c6, we have king to e7, and now queen to c5, a new check. We have king to e8, again a new check, king to e7, and now rook to e3. Here of course Magnus is staying very active with his pieces. He's trying now to deliver some annoying checks, and then he's trying also to include maybe the rook here in the attack on the f file. So we have rook to a7. If you try something like rook to d8, because as we said, the threat was maybe something like queen to d7, annoying check. The rook to d8 could be met of course with this idea, queen to b7, and even if you try king to f6, then we have this one, e7. Now you have to protect, and now with queen to f3, queen to g4, and queen to h4, black is even getting checkmated. So it's really wild how this queen and rook are really working in a beautiful tactical way. Black basically cannot escape from this attack. Black can only manage to get the draw, I think, if Magnus Carlsen would have made a huge blunder or something. So I have to move rook to e3. Here Hikaru tried rook to a7. As I said, instead of this move rook to d8, he's trying still to protect this d7 square, and especially he's trying of course to protect his 7th rank. But here Magnus plays queen to c5, we have a check, king to e8, queen to c6, and here after move queen to b6, again the rook is hanging. Here Hikaru tried rook to g2. This was now a beautiful move by Magnus Carlsen. He stepped back from the defense of the g2, but now after king to f1 and rook to g1, okay, you have only one more check, but now no checks are possible. Magnus is protecting the b2 square, and now it's completely winning. The rook is hanging, so you have to react. Here Hikaru tried rook to a8, but now comes this check and the rook is hanging. So you have to play king to d6, and after move rook to d3 and king to e6, here Magnus played queen to c6, and in this position Hikaru Nakamura resigned. So Why did he resign? Because even if you try here something like rook king to f5, then you get rook to d5, and if you're going towards the king side here, then of course you get checkmated with queen to c4. If you try here something like king to f7, then of course you get this tactic. You get first the check, then we take the queen, and then we'll take afterwards also the rook on a8. Again, it's completely winning for white. So really beautiful tactics here by Magnus Carlsen, especially with this exchange sacrifice in the end, that he noticed that the king couldn't be protected by both of his rooks. You see how piece activity is much more important than the structural weakness that Magnus Carlsen had at the beginning. This isolated pawn on d4, it doesn't matter. Piece activity is much more important, and here Magnus punished Hikaru's passive play with beautiful tactical shots. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. I really enjoyed it a lot. If you want to see more best chess games of all times, check out my coverage. Here's the link of our whole playlist with some more beautiful games that were played in the past. And if you want to see the top engines battling it out in their best chess games, check out my commented chess games played by computer series with some more games played by Alpha Zero, Lila Zero, Stockfish, and many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chats is the best, of course.